Yes, hi, Mr. Pulido. I would like to know what motivates you to defend such a monster. If he had done this to someone you loved, would you still say that you would keep appealing and not let him be punished?
The caller, do you think he should have no defense attorney?
Well, you know that he's the one who committed the crime, such a horrible crime. I mean, I have 3 children.
Well, why is the lawyer...
I'd like to answer her question. Look, I'm like any other citizen. If somebody did this to someone in my family, they wouldn't make it to trial. I would make sure of it. As far as this case is concerned, I was motivated because it was interesting. I'm a criminal lawyer because it is interesting, and this man has rights, and I'd like to protect them.
Why do you think the public doesn't understand that?
Well, the public is misinformed and uneducated, and they don't want to. It's like a jury. They believe what they want to believe. I think we should just be rid of this person. Most people in Philadelphia didn't think he deserved the trial. And that's what law is all about, and I'm going to make sure that I'm the buffer between the government and the citizen.
Why, Doctor, do you think the public understands that if Gary Heidnik tonight has an attack of appendicitis in that hospital, they will rush a doctor in, they will perform an appendectomy, they'll give him the best medical care they can, and no one will yell at the doctor tomorrow. Why do they yell at Chuck?
Well, people blame lawyers for a lot of things, and they associate
Right, they're both
defense
professionals
attorneys
doing what they're supposed to do.
Sure, but medicine is supposed to be value neutral, and law, of course, isn't. One is taking an advocacy position, and every defendant in this country is entitled to that.
Did that automatically, Charles, make this easier for you when you have a case in which the crime is heinous?
Well, let's say
frankly.
Heinous, yes, it makes it easy, but the evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't easy from the fact that just what we discussed tonight about the bizarre acts. That in and of itself said, most people say that's insane. That's why the jury had to be very attentive, which they were. They had to be very conscientious, which they were. And I don't think that, as Mr. Prudo indicated, they jumped to a decision. They weighed all the evidence in this case. They found the truth, and the truth was that this man deserved the electric chair.
Well, they certainly didn't jump to a decision. They were out for 3 days.
I didn't say anything about jumping the decision. They weighed the decision. They took their time.
I've been through a lot of insanity trials, and I'm sorry to say that it's not always the evidence that sways the jury, but rather very specific kinds of features of a case. If I had to guess the most important thing to a jury in a case like this, it's the fact that he did this to other people's families, not his own. He's a scary guy, and they had to be afraid that someone was going to let this man out.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
That's what you believe they thought.
Well, I believe that's important to a jury. Whether he's insane or not, that always matters to a jury. He's a scary fellow.
Doctor, I think if you saw these people, saw what kind of backgrounds they had, and saw how they worked, and they worked hard to come to this verdict, and they heard the evidence, and they came to the truth. They disbelieved completely, I believe, the testimony of the 3 defense experts who were completely dismantled by my cross-examination because they didn't rely upon the facts. They relied upon what Gary Heidnik told them the facts were. I relied upon the facts.
All right, okay, Charles. When do you file your appeal?
The appeal's already been filed, and we have several errors. I just want to say this. I do believe we had a good jury. The trouble is, with the re-instructions to that jury, the fact that this man, and this is what the judge said to the jury, you have to hope that if you find him not guilty by reason of insanity, that the authorities will make the proper decision. What does that tell you? You mean this nut might be out again? I think he's insane. I think he's insane, but I'm certainly not going to be part and parcel of him getting out again.
I thank you all very much. Our guests have been Chuck Prudo Jr., Dr. Park Dietz, and in New York, Charles Gallagher. We'll be back in a moment with Malcolm Forbes on Larry King Live. Dudley Moore will be with us tomorrow night. Don't go away.
Coming up, larger than life, Malcolm Forbes.
The following is a paid commercial announcement.
Profile, George Bush. In World War II, George Bush was the youngest pilot in the Navy, flew 58 combat missions, and won the Distinguished Flying Cross for bravery under fire. Bush built a successful small business, served in Congress, as ambassador to the UN and China, and as director of the CIA. And as Ronald Reagan's trusted vice president, George Bush has helped produce the jobs and growth of the longest economic expansion in American history.
George Bush will make a great president. But first, we have the tough job of getting him elected. Call this number now, and I'll send you a free action kit from Americans for Bush to help elect George Bush president. Both the phone call and the action kit are free. The action kit contains a Bush Dukakis record comparison, bumper stickers, a Bush poster, victory plan, and more. Call now and help elect George Bush our next president.
Call 1-800-652-4422 now.
This has been a paid commercial announcement.
Friday night, outlaws have rustled his cattle, bushwhacked him, kidnapped his woman, and gunned down his best friend. Now, Errol Flynn is headed for a showdown. But first, he's got to stay alive long enough to reach San Antonio. 8:05 Eastern on Superstation TBS Friday night.
What type of person kills again and again and again? Profile of the serial killer, tomorrow on Sonia Live in L.A., noon Eastern on CNN.
Our next guest, the famed industrialist, the owner of Forbes magazine. According to his own magazine, he's one of the 400 wealthiest people in this country, and he's written a new book, his fifth. It's called They Went That-A-Way. It is published by Simon & Schuster. There you see its cover, and it's about the deaths of famous and infamous people. How on earth did you get the idea to say, I'm going to write a book about how people died?
Well, it sounds morbid. It sounds depressing. But actually what triggered it, Larry, was in conversation. Every once in a while, a name will come up and a famous name, whether it's historical or contemporary, and say, whatever happened to? And in a few instances, when they concerned businessmen, I either looked up or had one of the Forbes magazine researchers look up what did happen to them. A fellow like Will Durant, who had founded General Motors, died running a bowling alley and depending on handouts, things like that. And then I sort of thought, it's fascinating. It's not really morbid. It's not dwelling on death. It's how did they get out of the scene, these famous people. And very often myths accompanied it, and it was kind of fun dusting off the demises.
Did you pick the title?
Yes.
Right. Why are we interested? If it's not morbid, why are we interested in how other people left this earth?
I think we all have curiosity. I think nobody thinks they're going to hang around forever. It's not dwelling on our own deaths. It's not, it's just that it's interesting. If somebody, the way Jimmy Dean died, almost created the myth that then was buttressed by two tremendous hits that he had that came out after he died. I think...
But we wonder about that moment, don't we? Don't we wonder about that?
Well...
what was said?
Yeah, because very often it's historically fascinating. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, who'd been together, written the Declaration of Independence. Adams had helped edit it. They had worked together in the Congress. They became bitter political opponents, and Jefferson beat Adams for the presidency after Adams had a term. Then these men didn't speak together for years. They both died on the same 4th of July, 183 and 190. Things like this, there's not, it's not morbid curiosity like stopping at an accident. It's, I think in itself, and when you start looking at the book, they're short takes, so to speak, you find it's very hard to put them down.
Was this a tough research?
There was a lot of research, and I have to admit that my co-author, Jeff Block, a former Forbes editor, he dug into the nooks and crannies of the New York Public Library, which is an extraordinary resource, to come up with a lot of the specifics. And in many cases, we had to decide where there was arguments. Is Jimmy Morrison still alive? That kind of thing. There are people who speculated and claimed they saw him, and nobody did see his body. At the time of his death, it was a sealed coffin.
How did you decide who's included?
Just when names would occur, we'd think of political names, movie names, business names, names that automatically ring a bell. When they'd occur, I'd sort of jot them down, and then we'd get to work putting together what the facts were. And
who's the most recent?
Gee, that's a good question. I hadn't thought who's the latest number in there.
Is Jefferson the oldest?
No, I guess Jefferson was 83. John Adams was 90.
No, I mean in point of view of the date of death.
No. We deal with some Romans, Attila the Hun, and people that go way back. Nostradamus, names that ring bells. Sir Francis Bacon, Crassus, the Roman man whose name became a synonym for crass.
Oscar Wilde's last words were, either this wallpaper goes or I do.
Yeah, I mean, that's so great. Perfect for him. You know, he was such a wit and such an aesthete, and he didn't die right after he muttered the words. He was painfully ill for a while longer, but they were sort of a memorable, either the wallpaper goes or I do, and he did, and the wallpaper didn't.
We're going to include some calls now from Malcolm Forbes, an extraordinary gentleman who, by the way, is going to be our guest for a long time tonight on radio. We'll take lots of calls and lots more questions. Alexandria, Louisiana, hello.
Yeah, great show, Larry.
Thank you.
Mr. Forbes, I saw a talk show the other day concerning the near-death experiences and people describing a light, a tunnel, maybe a stream. And it was very fascinating. I'd like to know your opinion on this. And did you do, or your co-author do any research on it?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. It's not anything really pertaining to what's in this book, but there are those that there've been a couple of books out on people reporting that have been given up for dead, that got revived, and there seems to be a general consensus that it was kind of an interesting fade-out. You sort of, their best recollection when they were technically or actually maybe dead for a few minutes before revived or brought back, most of them described it as a pleasant experience where they sort of got outside themselves.
Yeah. Sometimes looked at themselves.
It's a nice thought that checking out can be pleasant.
Did your research find, as with Oscar Wilde, that most people die as they lived?
You know, I don't think probably so, but in the rock and roll world, for instance, drugs, there's such an intensity of effort and such a demand by the public that they're under such, they get so hyped up for performances. They want to give their best, and then there's a letdown, and then they're too up to sleep, and then they party, and then they need to be up again. And so many of the greats didn't last long. They burn out. So in a way, they die from the intensity of the way they lived.
You ride motorcycles and go up in balloons. Two things Jewish people don't do. So we're impressed with this. Also, when you do things like that, yeah, little joke, folks, didn't mean it. You must.
We have lots of
I'm only kidding. My tribunal way. Do you think about your own death?
No, not really. Somebody said, well, you know, how do you want to go? I said, well, I think I'm like most people. I'd like to go to sleep one night and wake up dead. You know, not have any trauma involved. Not spend 98. Not spend a whole lot of time. The tough thing is pain. The tough thing, like Babe Ruth. I mean, going on for 13 years in increasing agony, and he never was told or knew he had cancer. In those days, it was a dirty word. I mean, people, they talked about it like people talk about AIDS today. Cancer was something both lethal and something bad about it. So people who had it never said they had it. What did Ruth think he had? He just thought he had, sometimes he explained, well, it was a mild stroke. But he never knew. But he never knew and was never told he had cancer. It wasn't as common a label given. It wasn't as widely understood. The doctors knew what he had.
Phoenix, Arizona, from Malcolm Forbes. Hello.
Hello, Larry. Hello, Mr. Forbes.
Hi.
I was able to get an advance copy of your book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good.
I wondered if you could tell me whether you put any credence in the rumors about the Elvis is alive bit, and also what you had found out about Jim Morrison.
Well, I tell you, Elvis is more alive in a sense than he was when he was alive, in the hearts of his fans, and they now have gone from the old ladies in tennis sneakers right down to the kids in their first sneakers. No, he's not alive. You know, I'd seen him about, a few months before he died. I happened to be in Las Vegas, and he was on a show that night, and through knowing the head of the MGM Hotel, we got a seat up front. And he was, you know, it was kind of shocking. The fellow was very fat, and he was perspiring profusely. And at the end of the show, some obviously paid hands came, girls came sort of up and posed in the end of the thing and then sort of handed him flowers. Nothing was very convincing. The voice was good, but it was almost a travesty of what it had been in that performance. In his dying, people have revived all the things that made him so great at the beginning.
He's always slim in death.
Yes.
Yeah. Jim Morrison, did you prove he died? Did you find...
Well, we're satisfied he did from everything that we could read and dig up, so to speak. It's interesting, though, that nobody saw his body except the girl, the lady friend that he was staying with in Paris, where he'd gone to write his poetry, which people forget he loved and meant so much to him. And he'd gone out to drink, and he had really a terrific drinking problem, much more really than a drug problem. And she said she found him in the tub at 5 a.m. that morning, dead. And this friend didn't arrive for 3 days later, and he was in a sealed coffin, and there was a death certificate signed by a French doctor saying he died of a heart attack, which could well be. I mean, after all, we all die when our heart stops.
No one unsealed the casket.
And but nobody unsealed the casket. And
Malcolm Forbes is our guest. The book is They Went That-A-Way. It's published by Simon & Schuster. We'll be back with more of your calls after this.
His contribution is a medical milestone in the battle against heart disease, the Jarvik Mechanical Heart.
We have now arrived at a point where from now on, for perhaps the next 20 or 50 or 500 years, there will always be at least one patient living with an artificial heart.
Robert Jarvik, a scientist of excellence in America.
Excellence in America is brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet.
Listen to the heartbeat. Listen to the heartbeat of America. Oh, yeah.
Moving into more car doesn't have to be expensive or boring. Today's Chevrolet Celebrity. It's for people who've grown up without growing old.
The heartbeat of America. Chevrolet. That's today's Chevrolet.
If all there was to Pitney Bowes was Mr. Pitney, you'd have dreams and ideas, but no one who truly understands a customer's needs. Every dreamer needs a doer. That's why every Pitney needs his Bowes. See how your mailroom, copier, facsimile, and dictation systems can profit from the relationship.
I've got it. Let's make it work.
This destroyed oil rig off of the Scottish coast caused world oil prices to rise sharply today. What this means at your gas pump tonight on Evening News at 10 Eastern on CNN.
With Malcolm Forbes, Memphis. Hello.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Forbes if he's encountered in his research anyone who's been frozen alive, so-called.
No, I haven't, but I did.
That Disney was frozen.
Well, there's a fascinating story about that's supposed to be factual, that a Hollywood producer who'd made a great deal of money believed in being frozen, and he had specifically requested that he be frozen, so when medicine made its advances, he'd come out in good shape. But his widow didn't like the will he left. She didn't feel she'd gotten enough of it, and she was so disappointed when she got home she had him cremated. So it's kind of the reverse of knowing somebody who was frozen on the basis they might come back.
I tell you, Malcolm, is he mad?
The moral of that is don't leave your widow angry.
It's a moral for modern widows. Bedford, Massachusetts, hello.
Yes, Mr. Forbes, a personal question and comment, if I may. I saw your show with Walter Cronkite with the balloons. It was magnificent, and I love your balloons. And the question is, when will you be marrying Miss Taylor?
Well, don't hold your breath.
Good plug for the book.
we keep reading about that we have been, we are, we're about to be, but we have a very happy relationship, and we don't want to put it at risk by marriage. I think anybody who aspires to fence Elizabeth Taylor in and make her personal property is not going to be successful.
How do you like, being a publisher yourself, being the subject of other publications? Like the National Enquirer, they say you're going to get married. I mean, you read about yourself in the New York Post.
Well,
and you also publish. I mean, you have both sides of the fence going.
I think it often happens to people in the publishing business, but not usually because of a happy, enjoyable friendship with Elizabeth Taylor. Do
you like it or not like it?
Oh, listen, it's a pain in the neck, but when you're my age and about to be 69, it's kind of fun to have people speculating that one of the most beautiful ladies in the world that we might end up being married. As I say, we have a good time together. I don't think that getting married will enhance the friendship and fun we have together now.
So then you've discussed it and decided not to?
Oh, well, sure.
That's fair. I can't judge anything else by words. Okay, Yellowstone Park, Wyoming, for Malcolm Forbes. Hello.
Larry, we love your show in Wyoming here, and especially Yellowstone Park. We'd like to ask the question of Mr. Forbes, why? Why indeed did you jeopardize the integrity of the world's first national park, that being Yellowstone, by selling your Montana ranch to a commercially oriented religious cult instead of to the people of the United States?
Number one, when we sold the ranch that's outside Yellowstone Park, we sold all but 200 acres of it. The religious group, you can call them commercially minded if you want to. They've been engaged in farming and growing and so forth. When we sold the ranch, it was no longer something that we personally were involved in, and the government had no interest in acquiring the ranch. It was on the market, so to speak, and had been on the market for about 2 years. The government had expressed absolutely no interest in it.
So you don't feel any guilt or anything?
Absolutely no guilt. I mean, those with that particular religious conviction, they're entitled to their freedom, too.
Back with Malcolm Forbes in our remaining moments. Again, he'll be with us tonight on the radio as well. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Susan Rook.
And I'm Rick Moore. Coming up at the top of the hour on the CNN Evening News, rescue crews are still searching the rubble of a department store in Brownsville, Texas, after heavy rain apparently caused the roof to collapse.
The House of Representatives gets a unanimous recommendation to impeach a U.S. district judge.
And there is a face-like formation on the planet Mars that has scientists taking a second look at the possibility of intelligent life outside of Earth.
Those stories and lots more on the CNN Evening News right after Larry King Live.
Slow hand. He's got a face that I love to touch.
Introducing the new Schick Ultrex Plus. Its pivoting head has a lubricating comfort strip and one-push cleaning to shave you smoother than ever.
A touch this easy makes me understand. When it comes to love, I want to slow
New Schick Ultrex Plus, the easy touch for the ultimate shave.
At Volkswagen, our engineers believe car and driver should not merely act, but interact. To them, a Volkswagen isn't a vehicle for the driver.